Hey there, everybody. So here comes another video. This one is going to go the opposite direction of the last one. On this one, we're going to go from the small details up to the large details. Um, Basically, we're kind of gonna recreate that generic battle that had the three phases from the last mission. If you saw it, if you didn't see it, it actually doesn't matter. It's totally fine to watch this one first. Might gloss over some things that I showed, but I mean, whatever. You guys are smart, put together. So there's going to be a package here coming up. I haven't really decided how to name the things, but they're all packaged up now. And we're going to use those to build a generic battle. Um, so I'm going to pull in these guys one at a time. And this is going to show you like what you can do almost immediately. So this mission right here is I did take the steps of getting all the scenery set up, but that's all that's in here is the scenery. And I did that just because it's a pain in the ass to set up scenery. It takes a long time, and you have to be really, really careful because if you touch anything, it just barely moves off, and you get the idea. So we're set up. This is going to follow through a few videos. So this one is going to be like really just the details of each of the little pieces and how they fit together and how you make a phase, a portion of the battle that runs by itself and will lead to other phases depending on events. And it'll also talk a little bit about how you can modify these core components or change them to do the kind of things that you want or just have them behave a little bit differently. And then in the next videos, we'll actually demonstrate that as we slowly convert this. I think it'll probably take 3, maybe 4 instructions as we'll slowly convert this from a totally nothing, like this is just scenery, to a pretty complex and very, very dynamic battle that's going to move across this bridge here at Kalak. I think I'm not entirely sure how we're going to do this, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to make a mission where basically the Germans are going to be coming in phase 1 and setting up over here, and then coming across this bridge and setting up here, and then if they succeed, they're pushing back. And the Russians will be attempting to push the Germans out. So their last phase will probably be crossing the bridge this way, pushing them out. But all that's going to come over the next few videos. Right now, we're just going to build up a basic mission and start tweaking it for balance. So when you get a package, when you download the package, you're going to get some groups. The groups that you're going to get are going to be like Abreast R, Air R, Arts, which is Artillery R, Column R, Phase. There's going to be some other ones in there too. Some of these that are in here are like old or like just don't worry about them. Just pay attention to the ones we actually use. And all these are going to be like basically for building something up simply. They are all end in R because these all have Russian units inside them. 2 reasons I'm doing that. One is so I can demonstrate how you convert a unit from one type to another and how you set units. And then the other reason is because like each of these has identical logic depending on whether or not it's Russian or German. It doesn't care. And I don't want to maintain 2 simultaneously identical trees of data. So we'll start with kind of saying what these things are, and I'll pull in one of each. And we've looked at these a little bit in the other videos, but here they are all isolated and by themselves. And that's an abreast, so that'll be things that run like tanks, like they move phalanx style kinda. This next one I'm pulling in are going to be air units, so this is just like it's 5 airplanes that work together. Here comes some artillery units. This is, I think, 16 artillery units broken into 2 sections. Yeah, so like 2 8-piece sections. Maybe it's like that. Let's actually look real quick, because I don't remember. Yes, 16. 2 groups of 8. You can change how those guys are. We'll get there when we get there. Then here I'm going to pull in a column. I know that doesn't make any sense to you yet. Don't worry about it. It will in just a second. We're going to go through each of these one by one, and I'll show you what they do. But as these are loading here, I'm going to go ahead and activate these. And this means that they're going to actually function at this point. And it's really, really easy to do. You start with a mission begin. Here is a really big caveat to these systems, but hopefully people will just be using pre-built stuff or know this. Maybe I'll try to highlight it somewhere. You really don't want to all these things take a couple seconds at the beginning of the mission to activate and initialize. So what I'm doing here is like, if you remember, this is the abreast units, and this is like their whole thing. You don't have to worry too much about the details. We're about to go into them. but they have 4 inputs: activate, deactivate, move up, basically making them be more aggressive units, or making them be down, which is more defensive units, and then they report success or failure. And each one of these does that, except for artillery, which doesn't report success or failure. Artillery is a special case. Well, it's just kind of like there. But you'll want this timer to be like, it really only needs to be like 1.5 seconds right now, but like just make it be longer. The mission is less stable when everything gets going right at the beginning. I don't know why that is, but I find that when I start a whole bunch of stuff right at the beginning of the mission, I'm more likely to have it crash. And so basically I just hit the activate on all 4 of our units, on that being the abreast, the air units, the artillery units, and right here with the column units. And these are all just Russian ones. We'll see how to do the conversion here in just a second. And then we're going to go through these one at a time. And I think I'm going to start with the abreast, because it's kind of the simplest. So essentially, as soon as I put this thing in here and said activate, where you can see these yellow marks, oh, this is actually the column. Yeah, here's the abreast. You can see these yellow marks. Those are all their waypoints. And we'll actually go into it here just a little bit. For ease, I'm going to group this so that's easy to get in there. And I don't know if you guys have messed with this stuff enough to know the kind of annoyance and import of grouping. It's great, but you really kind of have to redo it a lot to look at things in different ways. Doesn't matter. This is just so I'm separated from the scenery and I don't accidentally select the scenery when I'm in here and working on stuff. That's the one that we're going to work on, and here's the remainder. In this case, I'm not naming these because these aren't really groups. I'd also like to point out each of these come with their own icons, and the icons turn themselves on and off depending on whether or not they're active. I've been thinking about doing a thing for like showing a phase for run, but I really want to see the icons really working and stuff first before like fancy crap goes in. So as I said, so this thing is activated, and so it now works. And so across these, waypoints that you see here, we can actually just walk the line of tanks, I believe. I've never been good at this screen. There they are. So like here's a little base that's set up. All the tanks start in their own little tank starter things. I had it previously, and I may go back to this, where they kind of end in tents. Right now, because this is a default mission, and we'll talk about it, they just kind of end right here. They do their whole mission, and they come back right here, and they just kind of stop. But you can really make them stop anywhere and very precisely. But I want something for them to drive underneath. And these tents, these ammo and plane tents, like work for that. But you can still see them when they disappear. I want them to be able to drive underneath and disappear. So dear developing people, having something like a hangar with an open door that I could drive anything into and have it disappear so it doesn't disappear in a visible way would be so rad. So you can see that they just they appear there and then they go this route. And these things have different triggers depending on what they do. Every single tank is individual. Every single unit in the system is individual. That's the main component, and the system keeps track of whether or not that unit is currently active. And it can become deactivated by being destroyed, or by getting back and succeeding at its mission, or being told to run and then coming back to base. And it will never repopulate until it is activated. And we'll talk about repopulation in just a second, as soon as we go through the control. So activate gets the whole thing started. Deactivate tells everything, if it's out there, to run back to base, and then never do anything again until activate is hit again. If nothing is activated, then it just turns everything off to make sure that no signals go in or out. Up and down switches what level the units are at. We'll talk about that in a second. And then again, this reports success or failure, and those are arbitrary to these units. In this case, failure is a certain number of deaths, and success is a certain number getting back to base successfully, alive and undamaged. These are controlled in here in kind of an interesting way. These control the actual existence of the units, kind of what I was talking about there a second ago. In each one of these units, for tanks, there's 10 active tanks at a time, but each one of those 10 could be one of 4 different actual tanks. And that is controlled by this thing right here. And this looks like kind of a big mess, but it's not actually that complicated. What this is right here is this is a thing that can be set to be at value 1, 2, 3, or 4 and can be fired. So whenever you send a trigger to here and then hit this, that signal comes out. But you can also set this to patterns. So it could be this one, and then those two would come out. But that's not how this is used. But as you can imagine, anything that you can set and then fire, you can use 2 of them in this thing to shuffle them. This is like bit shifting and programming. I promise I'm not going to get super dirty on the nerdy stuff. But it allows you to make the thing go up and down. So like what happens is that you the things that matter. I'm going to get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter to you. That doesn't matter to you at all. The things that matter are these 6 buttons and these 4 buttons. These 4 set what value it's at, and when I start the mission, I set it to something. It's set to 2. This means B. This means almost as aggressive as the units get. And then when you hit this, what it'll do is it'll fire whatever it's set to. So in this case, it'll fire 2. But then it'll make it so the next time it gets fired from anywhere, it'll fire 3. Because this it'll fire 1. Because this moves it up. And by up, it means this direction. So like when you hit this guy, whatever value at, it'll continuously go. So if it was at 4 and you hit here, then it would fire 3. And then you hit here and it would fire 2. And then you hit here and it would fire 1. And then you hit here and it would fire 1 again. It'll just repeat 1. And then you'd hit here and it'll fire 2. And then you hit here and it'll fire 3. And then you hit here and it fires 2. And so the events that are happening, whether or not the tanks are making it to the end of their run, whether or not they're dying, all of that controls whether or not these things go up or down with little counters and some other things. And I have it set in this one, so like actually a lot more than the currently active tanks have to die or make it back successfully. That keeps the mission at its level longer, and that kind of controls, when you control these kind of numbers, we'll talk about this in more detail in a later video, when you control these kind of numbers, it controls the speed at which the mission moves through phases. So like it could be at the Germans are approaching the bridge at Kalak. If I set these numbers down, they would start trying to cross the bridge earlier. And so that allows you to test kind of like, you can make a battle deliberately, like you could have a perfectly balanced battle and you can unbalance it by forcing one of the teams to stretch themselves. So it's cool. Anywho, that's the controller, and basically this thing maintains what level the system is at. And when I say level, I'm going to show you now. This unit, the abreast unit, has all the units in here. It says units abreast are. And all of them have something like that. Like the column says units column R and control column R. And we're actually going to look at each of these individually. This video is going to be a little longer than the 20 minutes on the other one. These are the map units. I'm not really sure how these are set. These are really just placeholders. Like I'm controlling that. I'm just making sure that I can control the map the way that I want to. So it's just a box that says tanks. Like that's it. And then besides the map, there's A, B, C, and D. And just to show you again that corresponds directly to what the last fire out of this signal was. And I'm going to ungroup these because I actually do want to see that stuff for my reasons. So like the A units are considered the most aggressive units. And you can internally here, in this specific case it doesn't matter, but you can have these things behave differently and come from different places. So like right now, since this is generic, I'm going to show you what the units are first. They're all lined up exactly right on top of each other. See, like you can see that the B units, yellow things, are right beneath there, right? Like, and that's just for testing because it makes it really easy to see what units are active and what they're doing. But you'll see that for A units here, I have BT-7Ms, little tiny fast tanks. And you'll see for D, I probably have one of the giant tanks like the T. Oh, I don't. But it's supposed to be. This is good, we can correct it. T-70 is a little light tank. This has less to do with bad planning and more to do with the fact that I don't really know what the different units are. What is it? It's the KV is their big tank. The idea being here that the lighter tanks are going to make it forward to their location a lot faster. But you can do this any way you want. Like you can make A's be the heavy tanks and D's be the light tanks. You can make A's be those rocket machines or like trucks without weapons. Like you can really make it be however you want. In fact, that's how you control what the mission is you control what these things are. But the idea should maintain consistently that your units will be at A when they're doing a very good job. Or their supply lines are really well in place. We'll talk about supply in a little bit. And they should be at D And the system will take care of all of that. As long as you send a signal for success or failure, all the default modules I'll send out have that already built in. Um, and they should be at D when they're doing not so well, when they need defense. And so they'll generally be like slower, less forward moving, but more defensive. So sometimes very heavy units. But really, you control that how you want, depending on how you want the mission to be. So what this lets you do, and is going to be different than the training missions you see, is that when you're seeing on the missions I've had up last few days, you know, like when it switches between units, they all do exactly the same thing, and that's because these guys are all stacked right on top of each other. You can, if you so desire, have them all move all around however you want, so that you can have a situation like, let's say that we were attacking this forest. It's totally full of gnomes, and we're just not into gnomes at all. You know, like you can do a thing where, like, when you're at A, you're attacking from here. And when you're at B, and you see this, like right now I am changing how these tanks move in their line, you know, like, so I'm making it be like, as the mission progresses, like when I'm not doing so well, I'm attacking from way down here, and I'm barely making it up there. When I'm doing kind of alright, I'm attacking from down here. When I'm doing pretty well, I'm attacking from right here, and when I'm doing great, I'm coming right here with safety behind me because I'm behind a river, and I'm totally gonna knock those gnomes out. They're toast. That forest is going down, and the motherland will conquer. So you can also set these dudes to like actually do different things too. Like all you have to do is move these. Like you can see how it works. And so now we're going to talk about what the waypoints are and what they mean. To do so, I am going to open up whichever one of these I didn't mess up as much. Well, whatever. Just going to set it back to the way it is. So now we're just looking at the B unit. This is the unit that's active when we're doing pretty great, but we're not doing our best. And all of these, by the way, all these patterns come with these like little static build-outs that are totally generic but functional and laid out just right. And so you can, like, when you separate out these units like this, you can feel free to like copy the statics, and they're all in their own little groups, so it's really, really easy. Find your other units. Line them up. Ta-da! And they're kind of also designed so all the different unit statics can pile together. We'll talk about that later too, and make like a big base. Like you can use lots of modules to make a big base. We'll also obviously have to talk about numbers, period. How many units you can have active at once. And also that's the primary thing here. Like this, the primary thing this system does is it controls, it goes, this is the maximum number of units of these types that I want active, and it maintains that number very rigorously. So we were looking at B, I believe. So the way that these waypoints work and these things happen is that, like, there's a cycle that goes through, and it can be different for the different units, and this is a different subject, but that maintains that these units stay active. So, like, it basically goes, okay, like, activate was hit, turn on all of them. Some of them go away, and they go away for reasons of succeeding or dying. And after a certain number die or a certain number succeed, and then the system is pretty sure, hey, it's time to add more tanks in, then it'll trigger all the tanks that had disappeared. They had deregistered themselves from the system. So like sometimes it'll be like 7 of these will show up, or 2 of them, or 3 of them, and often there'll be different kinds of tanks. So you can have the different levels at the same time, but you're only going to have 10 total ever. And that happens because, like, say there's 10 out that are level A, 5 of them die, and that's enough of them to die to trigger you getting knocked down to B. And then the next cycle comes around where it decides to pump out new tanks, and you're at B now. So now you have the A tanks at 5 and the B tanks at 5, both running, all with their own waypoints and going their own directions. The first thing it does is goes to formation, and then they just move forward and backwards and forward all the way down, like so. And then here they come all the way back, and then here they consider themselves done. So wherever you put these waypoints, they're all called end. It will kind of stop itself. I put them outside of these. If you're very careful and you put them inside of them, by zooming in really close, they'll actually drive right into there and stop. But if you're not very careful, they'll drive right into right there and blow up. And so, like, I decided to just put them out there so I could test things without fussing with nonsense. And then I think that's it. Like, so that's all the units, and they all follow this basic pattern. And so now we can look at, let me go into this group, the airplanes. Actually, let's look at the column, because the column is effectively the same thing as the tank. Only it is the same thing as the tank. Like, this probably looks very, very, very familiar. It is exactly the same. The big difference with the column is just how the units are organized, and in this case, what they are. So I'm going into units, column R, and you'll see that the A units, see how they start kind of like the tanks, where they all run out first to this formation. And as soon as they get there and see they're in a line like that, that generates the column. And then this is actually all their waypoints stacked on top of each other really closely. So see, they all hit that, and they each still have all their own waypoints. And all of these are set to automatically, these guys are configured to be on-road. You can change that, but they're configured to be on-road. So it'll run off-road happily, and in a column. But it's runs better on-road. And unless you make a change, if you do this off-road thing right here, and we moved it like this, so in front of this road, they'd try to get on there. Sometimes it crashed, but like for testing, it doesn't matter. And when you do it with a real mission, you know, like you actually do put them on the road. Like these are support units. These are like trucks and cars. You can put anything in there, but like it could be tanks. But if you were putting tanks in here, the idea would probably be that the tanks were being moved, probably not being aggressive. And then when they get to their last waypoint, they don't end back at their base. They end at their terminal, wherever that is, because these guys are moving. But other than that, they behave the same way. Where here, I have the A units are just like the cars, like the like I would guess that these would be like officers or like high-ranking people, because this is like, oh man, our support lines are totally awesome. Like we can just like start bringing in whatever we want. And the B units are the trucks, so they're bringing in more like significant supplies. The C units are defensive. They're BA-64s. So they're like ground defensive, and the D units are BM-13, so they're air defensive. Those rockets. So like if you were German and you were coming in and really attacking the supply line here, you would be getting more and more. The more you attack. Sorry about that. There may have been kind of a funny sound there. Okay, we're hitting about 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap up, but we're got a little bit more to cover before I start the next video. Which is we'll just go through the air, and then I'll start another video where we start pushing these together. That'll separate it nicely. So the air units are pretty much the same thing again. Like when we look at the control structure, we'll see it here the same. This is less complicated. This is what stores how many are active at once. For airplanes, I only have 5 active, not 10 active. But other than that, they're the same. They have their 4 levels. And I would like to remind you again that like right now these are active, like these are turned on. If we ran this mission, these planes would come out and fly, and if anything killed them, they would start getting more and more defensive. Like for example, they are, if we were to look at them, it's PE2s for A. And these guys follow a very similar pattern. They come into existence, they move to their formation, they move to their formation point, which is here. And they're a little bit different in that. So like suddenly these guys are all low priority as soon as they get here. Low priority waypoints means they're going to attack anything they can. And that works for ground units too. That does have me have a condition though, and this is something again for the devs I would really love a change of, is that your level of skill, and I understand why this is this way. I think it was a very wise decision on their end, but like I need a way to change it. The level of skill determines how far away you can see things. So it's really, you just can't use ground attack units that aren't aces, because they just don't notice. Like they'll never level bomb because they don't notice units that are like 4K away from them. And like obviously, like they'll just never see a ground unit, especially if they're flying way up high, and will never bomb. So all the air units, in fact all the units in this mission, are ace level. And that's so that they have the longest, when they're ace, they look the furthest away for bad guys and friendlies. And so they just move forward, doing whatever it is they do. These are exact the same way in that you can change these in any way you like. You can split them up to make like 3 go this way and 2 go this way, like whatever you want. And they just run through their 4. When they get to the end, this is where it changes a little bit, as they go back to here, staying on low. So they kind of come back to the beginning of their mission. Like that allows them to do some bombing or some attacking on the way back, where they're actually being aggressive. But as soon as they get here, as soon as they get back to the beginning, they actually go high priority back to base. So that's like, yo, go home. And you can trigger go home explicitly, and when you do, it's high priority. And so they'll run right back to base, not attacking anybody, no matter what. That's something I kind of sit in the middle of. Like there's times I want that to run back to be medium, but there's also like tons of times when that medium run back makes airplanes do really foolish things, like circle around when they're damaged, trying to attack something that has lots of guns. It's just weird. But okay, I think that's good. That's these units. I know that probably felt like a lot, and the core thing to remember out of all this is that when I pulled in these groups, when I pulled in A abreast R, what I got was, as soon as I hit the activate button, is I got tanks, 10 tanks that will always be active, with a little window of time between deaths, and continuously refresh themselves, operating at different levels and moving across the waypoints that I told them, and we'll keep doing that until I say deactivate. And that's what you get. And also those tanks will report to me whether or not they are succeeding or failing. You get the same for air units, kind of get the same artillery, it doesn't report anything to you, and columns. Which means right before I finish, I guess I ought to show you the artillery really fast. It's a nothingness. My intention with artillery is that it's really just there to be exactly what it is in the world, which is defense. And so what it is each one of the little units is 16 that are broken into. Right now they're just broken into like some ground attackers and some air attackers. Like most likely you would want to change these to something useful. And they have a single truck that drives in a little triangular circle and repairs at each point. Here it repairs these 4, and here it repairs these 4. If you destroy this truck, these units can't be repaired anymore for quite some time until that truck resupplies. And so that's like, if you really want to destroy artillery, which you probably do because it's pretty wicked, it's all ace, and you can put it in smart places where it really is very dangerous, especially when you have specific targets. You really want to get it killed. You really got to kill their supply. Otherwise, this guy will continuously repair them. And there's one of those for each of them. And that's it. Next video is coming up like really right after this. I'm going to make it right now. Thanks.